Well, it's 12 o'clock. We should get started. I would love to start out by introducing myself. My name is Chrissy Claudio. I work at the New York Beef Council as the Director of Producer Communications and Consumer Engagement. And in that role here at the New York Beef Council, I have the privilege of being the co-coordinator of the New York State Beef Quality Assurance Program alongside Nancy Glazier. Nancy Glazier is going to join us virtually today, but she is a small farms and livestock specialist with the Northeast New York Dairy, Livestock, and Field Crops Program. And she's a wealth of knowledge and helps to keep the ship steering straight here in New York. So a quick background of the Beef Quality Assurance Program. The Beef Quality Assurance Program is a program that provides systematic information to U.S. beef producers of how good husbandry techniques can be coupled with accepted scientific knowledge to raise cattle under optimum management conditions. And a reminder that the Beef Quality Assurance Program is funded by the Beef Checkoff and your Beef Checkoff dollars. So here in New York, we celebrate every October as BQA month. We have several different opportunities for trainings upcoming. I believe we have about 7 all throughout New York State. So if you are in need of recertification or just learning to or interested in becoming certified, please visit nybeef.org. Under the Farmers Fence post is where you can find out where all of our upcoming trainings are. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Michaela Clowser, who's going to be presenting today about the National Beef Quality Audit results. Michaela serves as the Director of Producer Communications at NCBA. Or sorry, let me start again. I apologize, Michaela. Michaela serves as the Director of Producer Education at NCBA. She leads the development and implementation of NCBA's educational programs, including the Cattlemen's College, held in conjunction with the annual convention, the Stockmanship and Stewardship Program, the National Beef Quality Assurance Program, and the National Beef Quality Audit. Michaela earned her Bachelor's of Science from the University of Nebraska and Lincoln in Agricultural Economics and her Master's from Oklahoma State University in Agricultural Economics and International Agriculture. A native Nebraskan, Michaela grew up on her family's registered Angus and Simmental operations. And without further ado, I'll let Michaela take over and go through her slides. But I would just like to remind everybody that at the end, we will unmute everybody. And if you have questions, we will ask that you put them in the Q&A box, and we will unmute at the end and address all of those questions. Thank you for being here, Michaela.
Great. Thank you so much, Chrissy and Nancy, for having me. I was excited to jump on and speak with New York cattle producers, both dairymen and beef cattle producers. So thank you all for having me. Like Chrissy said, I will be discussing the results of the latest National Beef Quality Audit that was wrapped up last year. So we are in the middle of our rollout and sharing all that information. And I do want to share that the National Beef Quality Audit is pretty extensive research project, which I'll talk more about here in a second, but it is completely funded by the Beef Checkoff. So it is your checkoff dollars, going to work and finding the latest research. So so again, like Chrissy mentioned, if anyone has any questions, go ahead and throw those in the Q&A in the chat box, and then we can have a good discussion at the end. All right, so to provide some background as to what the National Beef Quality Audit is. So the start of the quality audit, really came about in the late 80s, early 90s. A lead economist for the National Cattlemen's Foundation really began to look at the industry as a whole and saw that we were losing, pretty significant dollars in terms of lost opportunity for producers. So, if we remember this time, our consumer wasn't necessarily that happy with our product. It was inconsistent. We had injection site lesions, and our consumer wasn't as confident with our product that they are today. So this lead economist did a pretty extensive research study and found that we were losing at the time in 1991 about $12 billion of lost opportunity as an entire industry. And with that, the National Beef Quality Assurance Program was born, and the National Beef Quality Audit came about. So the National Beef Quality Audit takes place every 5 years, and it really serves as a benchmark in the industry. That's something to keep in mind when we go through all this data, because it will be pretty data heavy. Is that this research project, takes place at a specific point in time, and really is a snapshot of the industry to serve as a benchmark to see where we are at. In terms of quality, defects, and continuous improvement and additional opportunities as an industry. So the National Beef Quality Audit is conducted in 3 phases. First is our interview phase, where we interview those really big buyers of beef. These are interviews with those key employees that are making those purchasing decisions for those companies. We'll talk a little bit more about those companies, but packers, further processors, food retail. We really tried to get a wide range of expertise. And then after we conduct the phase 1 interviews, we then go into the plants and conduct in-plant data collection for phase 2. So we go all across the country and look at many plants and collect data both from the fed and that market cow and bull sector. So once we have this massive set of data collected, we come together at what is called our strategy session. So our strategy session is an opportunity for industry stakeholders to come together, look at this data, and decide where are we going as an industry, where have we improved, and where are some of these additional opportunities. Representatives at the strategy session are researchers, academics, geneticists, all the way, cow-calf producers, feeders, and packers, and some food retail service folks. So everyone has a seat at the table for the strategy session. So like I said, this is a pretty extensive research project. As you can see, we went to 42 different plants in 18 different states and collected data from September 2021 to November 2022. And the number says around 30,000 data points were collected from both fed and market cow and bull plants, but it's probably closer to that 40,000 were data points were collected. So it's pretty extensive there. So first, we're going to start out with this phase 1 interview with the phase 1 interviews. So the total interviews, as you can see, we interviewed packers, retailers, food service, further processors, and government and trade organizations. An example of those government and trade organizations would be the U.S. Meat Export Federation. So cattle types reportedly purchased by sector, just something to call out here. So as you can see, both dairy and beef were represented across the board, from packers to further processors. However, this is the first year that we asked about beef on dairy, if these companies were purchasing beef on dairy cattle, and they were, and we see that, we plan to see that more going forward as well. However, since this was the first year, we're not able to watch a trend with this data. So just something to keep an eye on, and certainly, a hot button issue right now. So we looked at a SWOT analysis for both fed and market cow and bulls. So that's looking at strength, weaknesses, opportunity, and threats. So when asking these companies, what changes has your company witnessed since the 2016 audit? What we saw from these companies was that there was a knowledge of the program. This is meaning that these companies were more aware of these animal welfare programs, such as BQA and other auditing programs. Something else to call out is that we were more efficient as an industry, and we'll talk a little bit more about this in the next couple of slides. But we saw this as a big win, is that efficiency really stood out as an industry for us. Strengths for the fed sector, for those steers, for that steer and heifer sector, was product quality. We're seeing the highest quality beef ever produced in terms of quality, grade, and total pounds. So That's definitely something to hang your hat on as an industry, and something that we really are proud to highlight. Additionally, just those continued increased opportunities. Chrissy and Nancy do a lot of work in putting on great programs, for continuous producer education, and we're seeing that further down the supply chain, is that these purchasers really do appreciate those producer education events and opportunities, and want to see more of that going into the future. Potential threats for the Fed sector. Just a couple of things to highlight. Environmental concerns and activists were thrown out. However, a lot of these things, the producer cannot control. As you can see, labor shortages, cybersecurity was a first that was called out for this audit. So a wide range of threats for this sector. So when asking what does food safety mean to your company, something that we were really excited to highlight is that these companies said that it was everything. It was a way of business. It was assumed. So we know that we're producing, a really high quality, safe product. And then what does the term animal well-being mean? These companies directly associate the term animal well-being with animal handling, and that directly correlates with the entire beef quality assurance program. So we know that that they're paying attention to those programs, and it's coming from even further down to our consumer, not just these large companies that are purchasing beef. It's coming from those where this beef is at the table. When this is just some of our consumer market research that NCBA conducted, funded by the Beef Checkoff. So when consumers were asked if there were any concerns with cattle production, the vast majority said no concerns, as you can see there at 43%. However, if there was a concern, it was animal welfare. I think that's pretty telling. It's not environmental impact, not hormones, not antibiotics. It's animal welfare. Our consumers care about how our cattle are cared for, and through the beef quality assurance program, you're able to take credit for all the good work that you already do as producers in caring for your cattle. And again, just to highlight some more of our consumer market research, before, as consumers, before they were exposed to BQA, their perception on how cattle are raised versus after, how consumers felt about how cattle were raised after being exposed to BQA. You can see that that after exposure to BQA, our consumers, their perception improved. So you probably noticed that during the dates of the National Beef Quality Audit happened at a very specific point in time. So we can't talk about this audit without talking about the COVID-19 pandemic that took place. So as you can see, there were positives that came out of the COVID-19 pandemic, and we know that beef performed. So we all saw photos of the grocery store where the beef aisle was empty, but the alternate synthetic proteins were full. Beef performed. People wanted beef, and they couldn't get enough of it during the pandemic. And additionally, when looking back at the increased efficiency of the industry, that this is where beef really outperformed and shined when compared to other proteins. The beef industry was forced to make improvements that typically would have taken 5 years. They had to make those improvements in 6 months, and they did so. So we were extremely efficient as an industry during the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we all know the laundry list of negatives: the labor shortages, supply chain malfunctions. We had to, hold cattle back, and I think that certainly has impacted this data set, and I'll call that out as we go forward. But overall, we know that beef performed, and our consumers wanted beef. So next, we'll go into the interview phase for the market cow and bull sector. So what is the image of the cow and bull industry? This was something to call out, is that it was very good. These companies, when comparing the 2016 audit to the 22 audit, the image of the cow and bull sector really improved. Strengths, these market cows and bulls added and continue to add a ton of secondary value to the industry, and these companies are calling that out, and they're using, these primals and subprimals from these market cows and bulls for their product, and it's a high quality product. Weaknesses, however, we'll talk a little bit more about this. Foreign objects continue to show up, and is something to address and discuss, as an industry. Which I have a couple slides on that later in the presentation. Again, really similar to the Fed sector, for opportunities for the market cow and bull sector, is that producer education effort, and the continued improvement and education efforts through the beef quality assurance program. So again, really similar to the Fed sector, changes that their companies have seen since the 2016 audit, overall knowledge of the program, again, meaning, those welfare programs like BQA and other auditing systems. So now we're going to go into the phase 2. So this is the in-plant data collection. We'll start with the fed cattle. So first we want to call out, this is the first audit where we collected data on BQA and BQA transportation certifications. As you can see, the vast majority of professional drivers for the Fed sector were familiar and or certified with BQA transportation. We know that is due to requirements with the packers, but this is an industry-led effort, so we were pretty pleased to see these numbers for BQAT certifications. Trailer types used when hauling these cattle, vast majority were hauled with cattle pots. And transportation, just some call outs that I wanted to do. So I know there's a lot of numbers in this chart, but as you can see, the average time traveled for these fed cattle was about 3 hours. But however, as you can see, the maximum was 23 hours. That's a long time for cattle to be on a trailer, and this is just a single leg of their trip. They could have had other legs before getting to the plant. So just something to keep in mind, that at least one load was on the trailer for 23 hours. And then something else I wanted to point out here, area allotted per head, as you can see, only 6 square feet per animal for this specific load that was called out. And BQA recommendations are about 12 square feet per 1,000-pound animal, and we know that these cattle are a lot bigger than 1,000 pounds anymore. They're reaching that 1,500 pounds. So that's not a lot of room, and can cause some animal welfare issues, cattle going down, or additional bruising in the trailer. Cattle mobility. So as you can see here, we compared the 2016 and the 2022 audit. Quick rundown of the mobility scoring system. So mobility score 1, these cattle can walk really easily. They're completely sound. Mobility score 2, a little stiffness, maybe a little shortness of stride. However, we still deem them as fit to transport. Mobility score 3, there's an obvious limp and some discomfort with these cattle. These cattle are typically, last on, first off type of cattle. And the mobility score 4s, those are not fit to transport. Those are, we deem them as statue-like. They're really reluctant to move. So as you can see here, we're comparing the 2016 audit to the 22 audit. We had mobility score 1s move into that mobility score 2. But however, through research candidly happening right now, we're seeing that mobility scores are going back to pre-COVID numbers. We think that this might have been an effect from COVID, with those cattle being held longer in the feed yards. Black-hided cattle, we saw more black-hided cattle at 62.3%. Black-hided for this audit. Bruising, As you can see, so something to call out is that this is no bruises. These are no bruises. So 47.7% of fed cattle did not have a bruise, meaning that, around 52%, over half of these fed cattle did have at least one bruise. This is something that we saw quite a bit throughout this audit, and something to consider as producers, the lost opportunities with that lost product of bruising. So bruise severity, so bruising increased and severity also increased. As you can see here, more major bruising and critical and extreme bruising. So, losing 10 pounds or more of product from bruising. Switching things up, certified marketing programs. So just something to call out here is that these are those value-added programs that cattle are being fed into. We'll talk about certified Angus beef here on the far left side of the screen. Just to put this into perspective as to how these programs are expanding. In the 2016 audit, only a little over 3% of cattle qualified for CAB, and now we're close to that 15%. So cattle quality do continue to increase, and we're seeing that with some of these programs. Changes in prime and choice over time. Highest number of prime and choice graded cattle ever recorded at 7.5% of prime, and that's called out here. Just to compare year over year, we made a significant jump from in 2016, 3.8% to 2022 to 7.5%. During our strategy session, some of these researchers said that they never thought that they would see, us hitting 8% to 10% prime numbers, and we're hitting that now. So that certainly is a huge win for the industry of the total quality that we are producing. Carcass weight distribution. So it's no surprise that cattle do continuously get bigger. The average is about for hot carcass weight, every 5 years, 25 pounds are added on to the average hot carcass weight, and this certainly trends that way. We had a pretty big jump from those 1,000-pound to almost 1,100-pound hot carcass weights for this audit. And we know COVID-19 did have an impact on this, but we are continuing to see this in the industry. Ribeye area. So with these larger cattle or larger ribeyes, the average ribeye area is a little over 14 square inches. And with larger cattle are higher yield grades. So as you can see here in 2016, almost 15% of these fed cattle were yield grades 4s and 5s, where we jumped up to about 23% of these cattle were yield grade 4s and 5s. So now we're going to switch over to the phase 2 market cow and bull sector. So again, beef quality assurance. This is beef quality assurance, not BQAT, so not transportation. We saw with this sector, we see a lot more producers hauling cattle, not necessarily professional drivers. So that's why we're at 64% of these transporters were certified, and we saw the vast majority were familiar with the program. So we're still really, really excited about these numbers for the BQA program. Again, here, just to call out, this is the same chart as before. However, we see that these market cows and bulls were on the trailer longer, for an average of a little over 6 hours, and the maximum traveled about 24 hours. That is a long time, and something to think about with these cattle. These cattle are, they can be hauled from home to the market auction. So they have to, withstand that transport from home to the auction market. So that's about 6 hours. And, we heard from our beef quality assurance advisory group that we have some representation from the Livestock Marketing Association on there. Sometimes these cattle are there for a couple days. So they have to withstand, the travel to the auction market, being in the yard for a couple days, and then head to the plant. So when considering fitness for transport, just something to keep in mind, can these market cows and bulls withstand the entire the entire trip and the rigors of transport. So again, trailer types surveyed, vast majority were pot-bellied trailers, but we did have more gooseneck trailers for this sector. And those gooseneck trailers were coming directly from the ranch or dairy, where those potbellies were coming from the auction markets. Again, mobility, I wanted to call out beef cows and dairy cows specifically, the same scoring system. We saw, mobility scores worsen again when comparing 2016. As you can see here, a lot more mobility score 2s for those dairy cows specifically. But again, also during this audit didn't just take place during the COVID-19 pandemic. It took place during a very significant drought that impacted, the vast majority of the country. So we know that had most likely had an impact on this data as well. So this is audit comparison of beef cows classified as inadequately muscled. So muscle scores of 1 or 2. Those are extremely light muscled beef cows. We had a big jump from 35% of beef cows to about 70% of beef cows were classified as inadequately muscled. So again, looking at beef cows for their body condition score, we saw more body condition scores 1s, 2s, 3s, and 4s, and then we saw less of the 5s and higher for those body condition scores for beef cows. And again, looking at dairy cows, we saw something similar. I did go back to 2007 to the 2007 audit to see that that we did make some progress in the 2016, and we do continue to make progress for the 2022 audit. However, we did see that that the body condition score when comparing 2016 and 2022 did decrease ever so slightly. Hide color. So the primary hide color observed in all market cows and bulls, it was pattern, so not necessarily Holstein. I know that it's a black and white pattern right there, but just pattern in general was the primary hide color for these market cows and bulls. And then percent of all cattle surveyed with arthritic joints. So, I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, a big win and for the industry is that we mostly have no injection site lesions. That's because of the BQA program, and we saw that in the early 90s. But something else that we also accomplish as an industry is practically no arthritic joints. Arthritic joints are an animal welfare issue, and they are a contaminant if they're if they bust open on a carcass, in the plant. So as you can see, we've made a ton of progress here, and something to certainly be proud of as an industry. So again, this is percentage of cattle with no bruises. So meaning that 33% of these market cows and bulls did not have a bruise. So 66% did have at least one bruise. And again, bruise severity, when comparing 2016 to 2022, severity did increase as well. But if we focus on this gray bar of the critical and extreme, those are those massive bruises where you're losing a ton of product, that does still continue to trend downwards. So percentage of defects in surveyed cattle. So as you can see, we'll focus on the orange bars here for beef cows and dairy cows. 66% of beef cows did not have a defect, and 21% of dairy cows had at least one. And 21% of dairy cows did not have a defect. On the flip side there, something to call out for dairy cows, as you can see, a single defect, that's 63.5%. So what we saw with this audit is that a full bag, so a full udder, was considered a defect for those dairy cows. The reason why is because if the bag opens up and spills on the carcass in the plant on the line, that is a contaminant, and that product does have to be cut out. You cannot wash it. So that's why it's categorized as that. I know that as an industry, that is something that the dairy industry, it's there's nothing to really do about that. But so I wouldn't get hung up on that so much. But that's why that those numbers look a little skewed, and just something that I wanted to call out. So food safety. So this is the foreign object discussion that I wanted to bring back up. So when asking these, when asking plants that specifically harvest market cows and bulls, uh, if they reported foreign objects, 100% of them said yes, they did, and 100% of them uh, specifically called out birdshot and buckshot. So all of these market cows and bull plants um, have, they all mentioned birdshot and buckshot, and then 50% of those plants um, had customer complaints, meaning, like further down the line, those further processors came back to those plants and complained about the product and mentioned that there was birdshot and buckshot found. So something to certainly address, and something that we're focusing on as the beef quality assurance program. And that we can, this is certainly an opportunity where we can continuously make improvement on and educate producers. So just to wrap up here, categories of focused improvement. So for fed cattle, food safety and cattle health, again, foreign objects. And, just to continue that increase in efficiency. For market cows and bulls, really focusing on timeliness and marketing these cattle, again, for foreign objects. And, just to continue to utilize the beef quality assurance program. And creating, a really great high quality product, no matter what you're selling, fed cattle or market cows and bulls. So with that, I wanted to call out the acknowledgments. Like I mentioned, this is a massive research project. So these are all the universities and some of the our lead grad students that we worked with when collecting and conducting this research. So just wanted to call them out. There is my contact information there. If anyone has any questions or wants any additional information, please do not hesitate to send me an email. I also do want to point everyone to bqa.org, where we have more information as well. We have our executive summary, which is posted on there, which I would like to point everyone to. And Chrissy and Nancy, I will be sending you guys hard copies of those. So if anyone would like one that was on this webinar, they can distribute that to you. So with that, Chrissy, I'm going to pass it back to you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, if anybody, so I do have one question so far, but if anybody else has any other questions, please drop it in the Q&A or raise your hand and we'll unmute you. But Michaela, the first question we have is, in the slide that looked at defects in dairy animals, you noted a full bag would be considered as a contaminant if it were to open and leak. Are you referring to milk leaks, or in this case, or in the case of severe mastitis cases, abscess udders, or does either register as a contaminant?
Both register as a contaminant. So milk, if it's just a full bag and of milk, that milk is a contaminant. And if that milk gets onto the carcass, that part of the carcass would have to be cut out. And same with mastitis as well.
Perfect. Does anybody have any more questions at this moment? Because we will also be sharing the recording with everybody as follow-up, so that everybody could watch it again if interested. But at the moment, it doesn't look like I have any other questions.
Awesome.
Thank you very much for your time today, Michaela.
Yeah, thank you again. And thanks everyone for jumping on. And again, there's my email, and I'm sure Chrissy and Nancy can connect you. And again, I'll be sharing those executive summaries with everyone. But yeah, thank you for having me.
One more question while we're here that just
yeah.
popped up.
Yep.
What body condition scoring for dairy are you using? Was it the 1 to 4 that we talked about?
Yes, it's the so we're not using the traditional beef cattle body condition scoring where it's 1 to 9. We did use the dairy cattle body condition scoring 1 to I believe it's 5, correct, Chrissy? Or is
I
it 4?
believe it's 1 to 5, and dairy
Yeah,
is
1 to 5.
1 to dairy
No,
is.
beef
I
beef
had
is
them backwards.
beef is 1 to 9, dairy is 1 to 5. Yeah. So we did use that. We didn't compare the two of beef cows
Perfect.
and dairy cows.
One more question now.
Yeah.
Regarding the bruises, is there a way to know if they are happening on the farm, during transport, or at the processing plant?
Yeah, that's pretty tricky to track. What we're encouraging folks, at the farm is to, look at handling facilities if cattle are getting their top line. That's where we're seeing the majority of bruises. But what we think is that the vast majority of these bruises are happening during transportation. Whether there's whether cattle are crowded in the trailer or there's too much room in the trailer, either way can cause bruising. A lot of those fed cattle going down into the belly, they hit their loin every single time, and that causes a pretty significant top line bruise. So that's what we were seeing for these market cows and bulls. We saw a lot of top line bruises, and then also side bruises on their sides. If that's caused by other cattle or handling practices or during transportation, it's really hard to tell. But we've just been encouraging producers, to look at what they can control, and look at, facilities and such, to see if anything is causing that. But there's been research being done right now, that's looking at a bruising yellowing, if it's healing or ages of bruises. So I'm sure there's more to come on that, for this topic, since it is pretty significant for this audit.
It is a hot topic. I have another question about
Yeah.
bruising for you. So I believe you might have talked about this in your last answer, but has the data looking at bruising been split out to look at fresh bruising from transport versus older bruising from farmer handling, which you just spoke
Yeah.
to?
No, it hasn't been. It wasn't split out, and it wasn't differentiated between, here's a bruise, is it old or a new bruise. We didn't do that. However, we do think a vast majority of it is happening during transport.
Okay, I have a dark cutter question for you.
Yeah.
This latest audit didn't mention dark cutters. Is this an area that has improved significantly enough that it's not so much of an issue?
So that's something. So we the data set that we looked at, what we collected was so extensive. So it's just something that I didn't call out. We did collect it. We looked at that for both fed cattle and market cows and bulls. Candidly, talking with those market cows and bulls processors, with those plants, it's something that they don't necessarily track. But for fed cattle and for market cows and bulls, it did worsen ever so slightly. I think for fed cattle, with it being, that specific point of time with COVID and everything, and the stress and the larger cattle, we did see dark cutters go up. However, not significantly. It was less than a percentage point, and overall cattle was less than a percentage point that had were dark cutter carcasses. So it wasn't significant. And I think it was just the circumstances causing them to decrease. But it is something that we've, made significant strides on as an industry, and has significantly improved.
Perfect. Thank you for that great answer. Well, I don't see any other hands up, and I haven't gotten any other questions. So if anybody thinks of anything, please connect with myself or Michaela, and we'll facilitate an answer for you. But thank you very much, everybody, for taking time from your lunch breaks or whatever you're doing during your busy day to join us today. And have a great afternoon, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.